Welcome back to Legends of the Arena, where we sit down with the men and women who have stepped in the arena of business and life. They've been knocked down, they've been bloodied, counted out, stood back up to fight again and win. Today's guest knows that battle all too well. Andy Horwitz has carved out a career in one of the most brutal arenas there is, Hollywood. He's the producer behind some of the biggest, boldest films on screen: Dark Knight, Suicide Squad, American Hustle, and Oppenheimer, to mention many, many others. And behind every success is 1,000 unseen scars, deals that fell apart, scripts that never made it, sleepless nights, and hard-fought victories. He's got an incredible story of starting as an assistant all the way to being a major Hollywood producer, and now just took another big swing by launching a new production company that is trying to change the model for production companies in Hollywood. Andy Horwitz, welcome to the arena.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, man. So first of all, there is a ton to dive into with you. I love for you just to share, the talk to us for a second. You go to film school, right? Let's start at the beginning for a minute, right? You grew up in Hollywood. You've got family that grew up in the business around it in various forms, right? You knew you wanted to do this as a kid. You go to school to be in film school. You get a movie in Sundance, which I don't think people realize how difficult that is. It is a feat on feet to pull that off. You land that in college, and you went back home. You're thinking, all right, I'm out of school. I got a project in Sundance. This is going to be a cakewalk. Like, Hollywood, here I come. Like, who wants to hire me first, right? So pick up from there. Walk us through from that point into where you ended up where you are.
Yeah, of course. So when I was in film school, we had a short film that screened at Sundance, and at that time, when you're in film school and you have a short film, which is pretty much all you're making in film school, it's obviously like everyone's very excited about that. And I was 21 years old and at Sundance for the very first time, and grew up sort of on the peripheries of Hollywood in the suburbs of LA. And so had grown up sort of learning about Sundance and hearing about it and being excited about it. And all of a sudden I'm like this 21-year-old kid with a little tiny, I think it was like a 7-minute short film that's screening there. And it was awesome. I still have I got a poster from Sundance that year that I have framed, and it was a really, really fun experience. And then, came the realities of the real world about, I think it was probably 6 or 7 months later when we actually graduated. And sort of venturing off into, I was going to film school up in Santa Barbara. And so moved back down to LA, got myself this little apartment in Los Feliz that was more than I can afford, with a roommate that was like a total weirdo that I had just met on Craigslist, and was like, all right, we're doing this. And it saved a little bit of money. When I was going to film school, I was working at the local video store in Ventura. It was called Salsers Video. And so I was lucky enough that my dad was paying for film school, so I wasn't paying my tuition, but I was kind of on my own and saving as much money as I could. So when I graduated, I had I think I had 6 months of runway to be able to pay this rent and look for a job in the film business, and was desperately trying not to just go do sort of standard PA work on sets, which is kind of what I was doing in film school on the weekend. So I'd drive down to LA, be a PA for the day on a reality TV show or a commercial or a little independent film, and then drive back up to Santa Barbara and make my, $250 or something. It was $100, $125 a day or something I was getting paid. And that was great. And so, right after graduating, I found myself in this little apartment and sending out resume after resume. As you mentioned, I have some family in the business. My dad is working, has been in the unscripted side, more physical production side of the business my whole life. My grandfather was on the very, very indie side of the business, in sort of what they call the foreign sales world of financing. And both of those sides of the business I had absolutely no interest in. So I didn't want to be in reality TV. I didn't want to be making little tiny indie films for $500,000 or $600,000 that probably nobody will ever see or hear of. And so my goal was, if I'm going to do this, I want to work, at a company that's making movies that I want to go see. But more importantly, I want to work for somebody that, has a career that I eventually want, someone that I think I can grow under, because I was at least a realist enough to know that, being a 22-year-old at that time, and I'd only produced short films in film school, that nobody was going to hire me to produce their movie. Like, that was just, I was at least that self-aware that that was never going to be reality. But I did very naively think that because I did all these great things in film school, that my phone would be ringing off the hook about people that would want the amazing Andy Horwitz to be their assistant. I mean, like, wow,
Exactly.
like how who wouldn't want that? And that could not have been further from the truth. I realized very quickly that I was one of thousands of people that had moved to LA that year that were looking for exactly the same kind of job, working for a production company. And so, kind of like, realized about 3 months in, of no phone calls being returned, no emails being returned, no interviews at all, that this is getting, starting to get kind of scary, because I'm running right up against, I think I had like 3 or 4 months more of money to continue to be paying my rent and surviving. And and so I called a friend who I went to high school with and middle school with, actually, who was peripherally in the business, working as the assistant to a director named Pete Siegel. And Pete Siegel had done some of my favorite movies at the time, like Tommy Boy and some great sort of comedies. And Pete Siegel was in soft prep on Get Smart, which was the new Get Smart they were rebooting with Steve Carell and Anne Hathaway. And the producer of that movie, a guy named Charles Roven, happened to be looking for a second assistant at this time. And so Chris, my buddy who I reached out to, said, "Hey, I think our producer on this movie is looking for a second assistant. I'll give him your resume." And so that was about 3 months after graduating, and that was the very first interview that I got. And I remember I got the phone call, and I was dressed very similar to this, and I had this sort of button-down shirt on. And at that time, Entourage was like a very popular show, and so I would watch it religiously. And all of a sudden, I'm in this giant fancy office on like the 10th floor in West Hollywood, and with an insane view, and assistants running around like crazy. And it felt like I was on the set. Like, it was like, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here. I made it onto the set of Entourage, but this is my real life. And I'm sitting there in the waiting to be called in for my interview, and there's two other guys there, and they've got suits on and they're dressed way fancier than me, and I'm 23 years old, and I've done a lot of PA work up until this point on set, but I've never been like somebody's like in office, like sort of everything kind of
Sure.
assistant at this point. And and so I went in, and I think I did such a good job because I convinced myself that, like, I'm never getting this job. Like, this is just a job that, like, it's the first interview. And these other two guys I was sitting next to in the waiting room were years ahead of me in experience, and they were dressed way nicer and they looked more professional. And those are probably the guys that are going to get this job, not me. And so when I went in there, I was just like pretty comfortable, because it was just, I had this sort of weird confidence, because it was just, to me, it was just an interview, but I was never actually going to get this job. And so in that interview, I was being thrown all sorts of questions of like, can you do this? And have you done that? And, have you rolled calls before? And have you booked super high level travel before? And have you worked with private jets? And I was like naive enough to know that, like, listen, if I get this job, I'll figure all this shit out. Like, these can't be that complicated of things to do. And so I just like lied, and I said, yeah, I've done that, and I've done that, and I can do that, and that doesn't sound very hard. And so I just was like very confident. Of course, I could do all this stuff, and I knew that I was smart enough that if I got this job, like, I'll figure those things
Figure it
out.
out.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, like, how hard is that? And
Sure.
again, this is 2007, so Google wasn't what it is today, and it wasn't as easy to find these answers. But I knew enough people that were doing those things already that I could just call them and figure it out. And so,
Yep.
long story short, I left that office and I was like, okay, one down, first interview, great. Let's now do the next one, and we'll find the right fit of a company that makes sense for me. And then a week later, I get a call being like, "Hey, we really loved your interview, and Chuck Roven's in town this weekend, and he wants to meet you. Are you around on Sunday?" It was like 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, sure, and I could tell, like, this guy was so busy. He was in at that time, like, just starting soft prep on Get Smart and The Dark Knight, and we read this movie called the Bank Job in post production. The last thing he wanted to be doing on, like, the one day he had to, like, not do anything was being interviewing another assistant. I knew that. I was like, this guy's going to be annoyed. He doesn't want to do this, but he knows he has to do this. And so I show up at his house, and there's another guy coming out. So I'm like, okay, I'm not the only guy. And I sit down in front of him, and he just looks exhausted. Like I could tell he'd just got back from London from scouting the movie, and like it was 9 o'clock at night, and he had a million other things going on. And he just then pretty much spent like the next half an hour just like explaining to me why I didn't want this job, like why you should say no when I ask you, do if I decide to hire you, you should tell me, you know what, this isn't for me. It's kind of what he was hoping I was going to
Yeah.
say. And at that point in my life, I was 23 years old. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have anything else. Like I was at the point in my life where I could literally give like everything to this one thing. And that's exactly what I wanted. Like I've always been that kind of person, still am, where I'm happiest when I'm like super busy. I'm not good when I don't have anything to be focusing on. Like
Yeah.
during like holiday breaks and winter breaks and things from when Hollywood is closed, I'm really excited and having the best time for like the first 2 days, and then I'm like ready to just get back into it. Like I'm just not
Maybe
focusing right on.
most people we talk to that
Yeah.
have that have done incredible things, most of them are what I would call hungry. They're
Yeah.
absolutely hungry.
Yeah.
They're make it happen people.
Yeah.
They're hustlers. Hey, I'll figure it out. I don't know, but I need this. My
Yeah.
back's against the wall. I want to go do that. Sounds very much like this is where you were. What do you think you did to convince him? What do you think got him? What do you think you
I
said?
think it was a combination of a few things. I think it was me just sort of genuinely being excited about him telling me that I will be working 7 days a week and like 24 hours a day, and there's never really a day off. And I was just like, I think I was into that. I was like, this is like, I want this because I went to undergrad. I got my BA in film and video production, but I never went to grad school. And so I thought to myself, like, I'm going to get paid to essentially learn standing next to one of the best to ever do it, like, and doing it at the highest level that you possibly can. And so I didn't really care what he was throwing at me. And I knew enough to know that, like, listen, Chuck Roven is like, he's a very tough guy, like very intimidating, large presence in a room, screams and yells all day long, but like doesn't call you names, isn't a bad person. He'll do everything he tells you he will do. He will do it. Doesn't throw things. He wasn't one of those guys, but he kind of came off as one of those guys to people because he was like such an intimidating figure, but he was a good human being at the end of the day. And I knew that. I could tell that. And so I think it was him seeing how excited I was about that. And I think also everyone else that was interviewing with him at the time had multiple years experience being someone's assistant like that. I had none. So I think he looked at me and he's like, I could literally mold this guy into exactly what I want him to be, as opposed to having to break other habits or work within a model that someone else molded this person into. And now I have to figure out a way to make it work with them, as opposed to I could just take this guy. He's like a clean slate. He's never been an assistant for somebody before. And I can explain to him how I like things done and how I work. He will know nothing else, and therefore it'll work better for me that way. So I think it was a combination of those two things.
Yeah.
That's kind of what made me, that phone call I got a week later, which changed my life, which was like, I want to hire you and you need to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just kind of what it was. So that's kind of how that journey at Atlas started for me. And that was kind of the beginning of everything.
And how many years were you in that role before you got the creative exec position?
So I was there. The standard route at that point for him was 1 year as the second assistant, 1 year as the first assistant. After you've survived 2 full years, he'll have that conversation with you about, like, is there another role, an elevated role at the company? That was like the standard track at that point. When I started there, 3 months after I started, so I was like just kind of starting to get to know the people in the office and how things work and like what to do. My first assistant, who is a more elevated position than I was, got fired like in the morning. Like literally, I had only been there for 3 months, and like the second assistant kind of does all the like books the travel, answers the phones, files the papers, very kind of like non-important. Like I don't interact with Chuck that much. Like he's right next to me, and I'm seeing him and the first assistant interact with each other all day long. Me, I'm sitting over there in the corner doing my little tasks, listening to the phone calls, but just kind of like staying out of the firing line, I guess is the best way to describe it. But I'm watching my first assistant just get hammered every day, like, cause they didn't get along and their communication was not good. And, Chuck was always, he still is the kind of guy where like, if you mess up, just own it. Just say, hey, I messed up. This is what happened. Move on. The worst thing you could do, which is what this guy used to do, is like, I wasn't my fault. I did that because he did this, and then because he did it, then I felt like I should do it, and it was just like then all of a sudden we're talking about the problem for 10 or 15 minutes when like why? You just say you messed up and move on. But it would just spiral into these like 15, 20-minute arguments between him and Chuck, and every minute of Chuck's day matters. So it's like now you're wasting time, and it's getting him upset, and they're screaming and yelling, and I'm sitting in the corner, like watching this going like, I don't want to be in that chair. Like that chair is scary. I'd rather just sit over here in the quiet zone. And then one morning, like I'm there and he's there and I'm listening because we listen to all the phone calls as the assistants, and I'm hearing on the phone, he's like, he's yelling at him and he's going like, listen, I can't work with you anymore. Like I need you out of the office. I'm on my way there. Like by the time I get there, you gotta be gone. And so it was like, I'm listening to this going like, oh no, I know what this means. Like that, it means it's me now. Like that that's the only option. So he leaves. I'm sitting there by myself. And then Chuck comes in, stomping into the office, and he goes like, I know you heard that, and I hope you've been paying attention because you're taking over as of today. And like, I don't have time to hire you a second assistant. I'm not going through that whole process anymore. So you just got to figure out a way to make this work. I'm leaving for London tomorrow to start scouting for the Dark Knight. I got to go. Like, Godspeed. And so I remember showing up the next day. He was on an airplane, so I had like 7 or 8 hours just to like look around and like realize the situation that I was in. And I just sort of skipped a year of like where, in terms of where I should be. So I was now like looking like, okay, if I could figure this out, I've just sort of ran further than I possibly thought I could in like this first year of being here. And so what I did was I took what was like a 2-person desk that required 2 people, and I sort of figured out a way to go work with one. And I changed everything. Like I changed, like we were filing pieces of paper, like literally every day we were printing out every email and creating file folders and putting them in a wall. Like, cause everyone was so paranoid that like they didn't trust email and they needed everything old school way. That was a waste of time. I created like a digital filing system on a server to make sure that, and with a backup, and figured out the phone systems and figured out sort of how to communicate with Chuck while answering the phones, while talking to him, while trying to eat my food. Like it was like, I just figured it out. And I knew that like, even though I'm changing everything and how this office runs, as long as he doesn't notice, then I'm good. Like, and he's not going to care. I could change this entire system. This system had been in place for like 15 years and it was antiquated and old and like, it just didn't make sense. So I changed everything. And I gained the respect of like every single person that was working with us. So like other producers on the movies we were with, the studio executives that were on our movies, the directors of our movies, all the other people in the office, because they were all just like, you're the only guy? Like how are everyone's always known Chuck Roman's always had at least 2 assistants. Now there was just one. And not only was there just one, but at this period of time, we were starting production on The Dark Knight and Get Smart, and we had Bank Job and Post. We had the international and sort of soft early stages of development at that point. So it was also the most that he had going on at one time in his life as well. And so I kind of just like wrote it out, and like I had no life at all. I had 2 phones. I had a Verizon phone and an AT&T phone because there was never a time where he couldn't get a hold of me no matter where I was. And that job, like at that time, was the kind of job where like, if it's Friday night and I'm out at a bar with a bunch of friends because I'm a 23-year-old and he calls and it's 11:30, like I can't like look at that call and be like, I'll call him back in the morning. That's not that job. That job is like you leave the bar and you answer the phone and you go deal with that, like whatever he needs you to deal with. If it's a Sunday afternoon and I'm in a movie watching a movie and that phone rings, like it's not when the movie's over, I'll call him back. It's like, you got to leave. That's the kind of job that is. And so I loved it. Like it shaved years off of my life, but like that was my grad school, is that I was like attached to the hip of a guy who was operating at the highest level and was learning how to operate at that level at 23 years old. And so after I just hit that 2 year mark of being in that office, and I had hired myself a second assistant at that point. He had been there for about 6 months. He was actually my producing partner from film school that I brought to work with me. And then Chuck asked me to go to breakfast one day. It was like beginning of 2009. And I honestly thought he was going to fire my second assistant because I had no clue like kind of what it was. And at that breakfast, he was like, listen, you haven't been paying attention, obviously, but you've been here for 2 years. And we didn't have any creative executives at the company at that point. The whole company at that time was like 7 people. When I left in 2022, there was like 26 of us. So it had grown like so much in that time I was there. And so he was like, I want you to be the first creative executive here. And, I hope you know what that means. And it means you're kind of like, you're your own boss of this. I mean, he's still the boss of the company, but it was me having to like come off the desk and get my own office. And yeah, that's kind of where it started. Like August of 2009 is when I became a creative executive.
And just so everybody knows, this is Atlas Entertainment we're talking about. There's a bunch of movies you've seen in the theaters, and Atlas is up there amongst them. So, but yeah, so that's huge. So, what age are you now? You're the first creative executive at Atlas.
Yeah, I think I was 25 at the time, and I've always looked very young, like my whole life. Like when I was 16 years old, I looked like a 12-year-old driving a car, and if I didn't have this beard, even though I'm 41 right now, I still look very young. And at that time, as a 25-year-old with no beard, I looked 16. So like, I looked like a 16-year-old sitting in this big fancy office of my own with the desk and like an assistant. And yeah, I think back on, I have photos of myself like in that office, and it's just kind of like, I wouldn't have taken me seriously if I was, coming in for a meeting with me at that point. But yeah, that's kind of where it all started in my executive world.
And so, Andy, in this role, did Chuck give you, because now you have to place your own bets, right? So totally different thing, right? So the first time you're sitting there and thrown into the deep end, figuring it out, but much higher stakes in this stage of the game, where first creative exec for Atlas, that's not Chuck, and you're having to make bets. What was the autonomy like? What was the marching orders that you had in the autonomy, and what were the stakes at that moment for you?
At that point, listen, a creative executive is what we would consider like a junior executive. So that really means like a creative executive is reading scripts when they come in, putting lists together for writers and directors for projects, actors for projects, being responsible for like seeing all the new movies when they come out, tracking young directors, and just being aware of kind of everything that's happening in town is kind of what your job is. Like you're supposed to like, at that point, you're getting drinks every single night with other creative executives and assistants and agents and managers. And like every night you're going and doing something and networking and meeting people and you have to have your ear to the ground. But I remember like my first week, when I was Chuck's assistant, it's like you start at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're in the office, the phone's ringing immediately, and you don't have like one. I remember like I ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner on that desk, like never left it. The only time I ever left was to use the bathroom. And even in the bathroom, there was a phone in the bathroom that like, because I was by myself, that I was able to like answer the phone from in the bathroom if I was in there. And then, the juxtaposition between that and now all of a sudden, like I have my own office and I'm sitting behind my own desk, and it's just quiet. And I'm sort of just looking around going like, there's no one telling me what to do all day. Like it's now up to me to create my day, like based on my calendar, and my phone's not ringing yet. And my inbox is pretty empty. And so now it's like, okay, like this is great. Now I could just like focus on building my own slate and finding my own projects and reading new scripts and trying to find new projects. And at that time, as a creative executive, because we didn't have any, became sort of like the junior executive on all the other movies that were already sort of happening at the company at the time. So like American Hustle was the first one. That one like was at that
Great
point
movie.
in time, the movie was called American Bullshit, but obviously we changed the title later on, but it was called American Bullshit at the time. And we at that time it wasn't even a script yet. It was just kind of an idea that we wanted to make a movie about the ab scam scandal that was happening in the 70s. And so as a young creative executive, like that was the perfect situation for me. I get to now be a part of a movie from like idea through everything that it became. And so that was the first sort of movie that I was put on as a creative. I didn't source that myself,
Yeah.
but I was sort of a piece of the engine that kind of helped create
Yeah.
that whole
Idea
situation
stage.
that happened. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And that was sort of the first one. So that was kind of
that was a great movie. Great.
Great
oh,
movie,
thank
yeah.
you, thank you.
Loved
Yeah.
it.
So and that was
Yeah.
that was honestly from that point when 2009. By the time we actually started making that movie, I think it was 2013, 2012. So, it was 3 or 4 years of like trying to get to that point of when we actually have a movie in front of us. And, that's kind of quick in Hollywood, quite honestly.
I have a couple of questions for you. So when you moved into your own desk and really kind of creating the next movie and putting all the routines in place, what was your how did you go about that? What was your daily routine? How did you think about being the very best creative director?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was about, I've always kind of prided myself in, I'm known in Hollywood as like the nice guy, meaning that like there's no one in town that I think will find that like has a bad thing to say about me. And I've tried really hard my whole career to maintain that. And that means if you're ever going to try to be that guy, it means that you have to return people's phone calls, respond to their emails. When they send you something, read it in a timely fashion. If you don't like the script, I would still meet with the writer and like sit down with the writer and hear about what it is, because you never know. Sometimes, like, even though maybe that script wasn't great, maybe that writer in 4 years from now write something great, and they'll remember how great you were to them, and they'll reach back out to you. So I've always sort of prided myself, and that's kind of who I've always been in town. So that meant, like, when I'm sitting there, when you're in Hollywood, when you're an assistant with people, Hollywood is very much like high school, kind of like you have like sort of like your classes and your levels. And so the people that I was an assistant with, I was meaning that other assistants that were assistants for agents and managers and studio executives and other producers, hopefully, if you last in Hollywood, you all kind of rise together, which means you all kind of become like, when I become a junior executive, they become junior agents and junior managers and junior studio executives. And then throughout the years, you kind of all go like this. And so you have people to call and people calling you. And because listen, when I'm a creative executive, the heads of the studios are not calling me, right? They're calling Chuck, but their underlings are calling me, and the junior agents are calling me, not the senior agents. And so when you become a creative executive, there's like a fun little announcement that goes out in the trades, and then everyone sees like, oh, Andy's been elevated. And then from there, because I was in a company that was making lots of fun stuff, organically your phone just starts ringing, and your inbox starts getting filled up, because people want to, they look at you like, when you're a creative executive, they know that you're the easiest guy to get a hold of them, and you'll probably call them back. For me, I would always call you back. And so I started getting lots of stuff sent to my way, lots of scripts to read, lots of people to meet with. And so my days were reading scripts, giving notes on scripts, having meetings with writers about potential future things, going to film festivals and seeing movies and watching all the up and coming stuff, creating writers and director lists to share internally in the company about, here's all the great writers that we need to be aware of that are writing great scripts, and here are all the great directors that are doing cool movies and cool stuff. Here's maybe some great directors working in the commercial space that are maybe ready for their first movie. And so I was in charge of sort of the whole creative environment of the company as a junior, just to make sure that everyone was aware of they had all the creative tools they needed to go push their movies forward at the senior executive level. So that was kind of what my day was consisting of most of the time. And then every night, was doing drinks and dinners and things with other people in town. And today's generation doesn't do that as much, but that was to me like so important. That's where I met like almost everyone that I still work with today and still talk to on a daily basis. Like, I've known them all since or not all, but I would say probably 80% of the people that I still do business with on a daily basis today, I met during that period of time when, let's call it 17 years ago, when we were assistants together.
Yeah. Don't you think we talk a lot about different skill sets in today's world, and the world's certainly different than when I grew up and as a teenager and in college, et cetera. We didn't have cell phones. You're a little younger than I am. But don't you think relationship building meaningful relationships has got to be one of the most important things?
It is in Hollywood. It is the most important thing. Like, truly, you could be you could be the most capable executive in terms of like being proficient in typing and writing and but if you don't have a network, you're truly nothing. Your entire value in Hollywood is your ability to pick up the phone and call people and have them pick up the phone too. Or having, hearing things in staff meetings and going, I know this person at that place, I know that person at this place, this is who I'm going to call about that. If you don't have those things, in fact, there was another executive at Atlas who came in right after me, about 6 months after me as a creative executive. He had spent all of his time so deep into the assistant world that he didn't do those things that I was doing when I was an assistant, which is do drinks, create those relationships. So when he became a creative executive, there was nothing happening in his inbox. There was no phone calls coming in. He was then trying to do it at that point, but it was kind of too late. It's kind of hard. Like, who are you? Like, why did I not hear about you when you were an assistant? And so in Hollywood, relationships it's like your currency. It's like if you know everyone in town, you are going to be successful in some way, shape, or form. If you know nobody, there's nothing you can do. You're completely paralyzed at that point because you have no one to call to help you do things. And Hollywood is about it's a very collaborative business. It's not a singular, you're not a one-man show in any world in Hollywood, no matter what you're doing. So it really is important to have that. And in Hollywood, your network is truly your everything. It is where you will rely on it your entire career.
Can you set the stage for everyone? I think a lot of times, especially when you deal with the bigger companies and Alice and some of the names you see, this sort of batting percentage of Hollywood to understand how many flops, failures sort of exist for the wins. And I'd love for you to connect that when you went from junior to all of a sudden now you're putting your own chips on the table. What was like that for you? What were those big wins and misses for you in that journey as you took that step?
Yeah, I mean, the ratio in Hollywood is people don't realize how hard it is, I think, to get a movie made. I don't think anyone realizes it. I think people, they see movies existing on Netflix and streaming platforms. They go to the movie theaters. Sometimes they hate the movie and they tell everyone how bad it was and yada yada, but they have no idea the fact that thing exists in the world is a true miracle. Like the fact that a movie exists, which means that there was millions of dollars spent on something for a lot of people to get together and create that thing that exists in the world. That's an incredibly rare thing. And we still say, even the most successful producers say every movie is a miracle. It is, because 1,000 things have to go right for that movie to exist in the world. If one thing goes wrong, none of that exists in the world. So you as the producer, that's what my job is. My job is to make sure that one thing doesn't go wrong, to make sure that movie does exist in the world. If you can have everything lined up, you can have the greatest script and the most talented director and a cast that's ready to go. And you may all of a sudden find your cast member arguing with your director and it all goes to hell and it all explodes. And literally 3 days later, all of that you had lined up is gone. It's just completely gone. That cast is gone. The studio walked away. The director left. Now you're back with a script. Now you got to rebuild it from the ground up. You got to push everything together. So most of the stuff that exists that you get to see in a movie theater, here's a sort of a ratio. If 500 projects sell to a studio a year, and I don't know what the exact number is, but it's more than that, but it's somewhere in that number. And that means either a studio bought a script with a director or someone sold them a pitch. Less than 1% of those will actually be a movie that exists in the world to go see. So that's less than 1%. So out of that 500, you may get 5 maybe that exist, probably less than that. And so as a producer, you have to have 25 things going at one time and hope that out of the 25, that maybe one year you can get that 1 year. And if you're making one movie a year as a producer, you are crushing it. That is a really good, most producers make maybe one movie every 2 or 3 years. It's kind of if they're lucky, but less than 1% get made, truly. And these days, maybe even less than that, because everything's being pulled back right now. So, you may get a studio that may buy a script in a bidding war for millions of dollars. You may see this announcement that 7 studios bid on it and the writer made $2.5 million. The chance that movie ever gets made, less than 1%. So like that, we did a few friends of mine did a study over, because there's sort of two different ways to do it, between like taking a script that exists in the world and selling it to a studio, or oftentimes a lot of people will just rather pitch something to a studio than have a studio pay them to write it. So that's a pitch situation. So we looked at, as a producer, we don't get paid as producers till we're making movies. So we don't get paid to develop movies or to sell movies. And we may develop a script for a year with a writer. It comes out great. We take it to the studios. There's a bidding war for $3 million. That writer gets paid $3 million. Me as a producer, I've not made $1 yet. And I will not make $1 until that movie exists in the world, and there's a set and there's cameras and there's actors, and I got all of that to that place. So that means that like I have at least another year plus of work to do if everything goes perfectly to make $1 on that movie. So we did this study of like, okay, let's look at pitches. So we looked at the last 5 years of all the pitches that sold to studios. That means that people just pitched the studios ideas. They paid that writer hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes over $1 million to write that script. And we looked to see how many of those pitches turned into actual movies that people could watch. The number was 0. And the number was 0 in the last 5 years. We counted over 150 pitches that have sold, not one turned into an actual movie that people could watch. So that gives you a sense of like how difficult it really is to thread the needle and get one through. And as a,
that's worse than venture capital.
Yeah,
that's worse than. That's shocking. As the guy outside of Hollywood, I'm a business guy. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the ratio is very small, and
the fact that you produced a bunch, it means
you've been
through a lot of scripts, and you've been through a lot of
what you guys
thousands. Truly, like thousands. Like honestly, it's been it is, and it takes years for everyone. Every movie. That's why like I'm very selective in terms of what I decide to focus and work on, because every project that shows up in my inbox, and we probably get our company probably 2 or 3 a week that are sent to us for consideration to produce. And I look at every single one of them and I go, do I want to spend 3 years of my life thinking about this and dealing with this every single day? Because that's if everything goes perfectly, 3 years of your life. If there's no problems and it actually gets to place. So that's kind of how I base my decisions on, like, do I want to spend the next 3 years of my life every day working on this, talking about it, pushing it, massaging it, doing all these things. And if I don't care about it that much, then the answer is no, I'm not taking on the project. Like it has to be that for me.
I know we're going to get to Big Swell Entertainment, and we can't wait to hear about what you're doing there. And I know John, we want to definitely delve into adversity and where maybe you've screwed stuff up, or where you're like, oh man, I don't see myself getting through this, and how you got through that. But I'm curious, one question is, what is the calculus, or what is the equation that you lay out when you're considering a project? So what are the 4 or 5 things that you run through, either scientifically, art, gut, feel? What is it?
Yeah. Well, Hollywood is a very reactive business. It's not proactive at all, meaning that studio executives are not proactively looking for the new thing. They're looking for the decisions that are made in Hollywood at the studio level are all about mitigating risk. They're all about defending your decision as an executive to your bosses of why you made that decision and spent money on it. And so when as a producer who's a seller, which I sell things to financiers and to studios, I have to think about, okay, when I develop a screenplay, what can I compare it to that's been successful in the last 2 or 3 years? Has to be different enough that it's its own thing, but I also have to have something to point to go, it's this, but that, right? So like, and if they can't find a comp for it over the last few years that was successful, not getting made, not happening. Because again, that executive that buys it and then decides to spend money, they have to go to their boss and go, here's why I bought it. And that boss is going to go, why did you buy it? And he can't say because it's a good script. He's going to have to say it's a great script. And clearly we've seen over the last 2 years that these types of movies make money and they're successful.
Right.
And he's going to go, which type? And he's going to have to point to. So if you can't think of any comps, non-starter. Then you have to look at, okay, when you're packaging movies, because to me, like selling a script by itself, you're so far away from being a movie. Like you're so far. you have to then go hire a director, and you have to hire a cast, and you have to hire all these other elements to make it into an actual movie. So for me, what I spend most of my time on is I don't like to sell scripts or ideas to studios. I like to say that I sell movies to them, which means that I have a script, a director, and at least one piece of cast. And so once I have a great script, and the types of scripts that I'm looking for are the ones that have great roles. So I know, because if it has great roles, I know I'll be able to get a piece of cast for it. If it's sort of generic roles we've seen before, you're going to get cast eventually when your movie's getting made, but only because it's a job for someone, as opposed to like looking for roles that could be career defining for actors. So like if an actor looks at that and goes, that would change my career if that works, those are the kinds of roles that you have to look for. And so you're trying to, so you start with a script, then you look at directors. So you look at directors and you go, okay, who are the directors that the studios want to be in business with? All the studios have lists of like, here's the list of all 50 filmmakers that we're excited about that we would make a movie with. Because I have friends at all the studios, it's my job to know who's on those lists, and I do. And so then you start to target those directors and you send them the script and you say, do you want to come on to it? Okay, great. Now you get one of those directors that's on that list. So now you've mitigated your risk in terms of developing a screenplay that has comps in the marketplace recently that has success. Now you have a filmmaker that you know those studios want to be in business with. Hopefully that filmmaker has made at least a movie or two that has been moderately successful, if not financially successful, at least critically successful. You know also that filmmaker will have the ability to cast the movie. And then you start looking at cast and you say, okay, let's who's the lead of the movie? Let's look at that role, which can be considered the lead. You go through the casting list. I put a casting list together with my director. We look at the last 2 or 3 years of the movies that were financially successful. Who was in them? Who's the star of those movies? Because those are the people that the studios want to be in business with. They're not breaking new talent these days. It's sad to say it, but they're just not. They're sort of like grabbing other pieces of talent that have done great stuff and trying to put them into bigger things and give them bigger audiences. So now I've got that. Okay, now I've got a script that I know has comps in the marketplace for success. I have a director who I know the studios want to be in business with. I now have a piece of talent, an actor who then I can visualize who this person is when they're reading the script. And when I take it to studios, I, as a producer, have mitigated their risk so much for them, because I know that if they want to buy it, they have to run up the flagpole internally, and they have to have things to point to as to why they're making this decision. And so that's all we can do. And sometimes we still do all that work, which usually takes at least a year or two to do all that work, and we still get passed on. Sometimes it still doesn't sell. And so when it does sell, it just means that you built it as best you possibly can, and you found the right executive at the right studio at the right time, and it all kind of came together, and boom, now you set it up at a studio. Now you're still far away from that movie really being a real movie. You still have to hit the number the studio wants to hit. You have to cast the rest of the movie. You have to find availabilities for your director and your cast to make it in that window. You have to create a budget with a line producer, and you have to make sure that you're on schedule and on budget. And then once you've done all those things, which then you look at another year, then your movie goes through what they call the green light process at the studio, which means that marketing looks at it, publicity looks at it, business affairs, production, physical production, everyone looks at it, and they all try to poke holes in it as to why they shouldn't make the movie. And so my job as a producer, make sure there's no holes they could poke into it. We have a budget that makes sense. We have a cast that everyone loves. We have a production schedule that everyone can hit because everyone's available. We are shooting in a tax credit friendly state, so we know we're maximizing our tax credit the best possible way. Our marketing is clearly defined in terms of how they're going to market this movie and what audience they're going to market to. And then if that green light process goes great, then boom, now you get to start spending money and finally start building your movie at that point, which means now you get to open up a production office and you get to now start hiring crew, and everyone starts coming together. And then that process usually takes about 12 weeks minimum of what they call prep. And then after that, you get your first day of actually shooting the movie. So that's sort of like that's the life cycle of a studio movie.
Yeah. Most people don't realize. So let me say this, Andy. I don't know. I would put up Hollywood as one of the biggest high-low kind of industries to work in, right? It's just filled it, and it's definitely an industry that is you're as good as your last project, right? You could be the darling today, and you're toast tomorrow. What was one of the there's no shortage of highs on your resume. What was one of the lows that really pulled you down? Were you ever in a spot where you're like, I'm ruined? Like, what was that moment, or what was one of those moments for you that was like that toughest spot in that journey?
Yeah, I mean, there's two. I'll use one example as like with a project specific, and then one example that's sort of like life and career specific. But the project specific one, I would say, would be one of the last movies I produced when I was at Atlas, called Triple Frontier. On that movie, that was
Great movie. I saw that one as well.
Thank you. Yeah, in that movie, that was an 8-year process from start to finish to get that movie made. And we got to the point on that movie where it had all sorts. That movie was like cursed. It was truly cursed. Like, we had one version of that movie that fell apart. Then the studio booted the movie. Then Netflix bought the movie. Then I prepped an entire new version of that movie with a whole new cast. And then, and keep in mind, this is my first $100+ million movie that I'm solely responsible for. So it's like, now I've like elevated to that level that I've always wanted to get to.
Yeah.
This is a $100 million movie. I'm the senior producer on it. I'm responsible for everyone and everything. And we are 8 days out from finally starting to shoot this movie. So I've got my cast. I'm in Bogota, Colombia on our tech scout with our entire crew. And we are scouting and we're doing our tech scout everywhere. And we're 8 days away from day one. And I get a call from my boss in LA who says, literally, "Are you sitting down?" And I go, "I am." And he goes, "One of our actors, who was one of the leads of the movie, is having a health-related issue, and he's got to go get himself cleaned up, and he's got to go away for 90 days, and we need to deal with this." And so I'm going like, "What do you mean? I need him in 9 days in front of this camera, and he's got, 64 days after that I'm going to need him for." And it's like, "I'm sorry, we'll deal with this." And so I'm talking to the studio and I'm talking to him, and we make the decision that we are going to shut the movie down. And so I have 122 people that have traveled to Bogota, Colombia with me. They're working underneath me, that are all working their asses off on this movie to start shooting in 8 days. I am the only human being on the ground in Bogota that knows that this movie is not happening in 8 days. And so I'm the one that has to go to all of our department heads, one by one, and tell them this movie is not happening in 8 days. But in addition to doing that, I'm also telling them that I need them to not work or do anything else for the next 3 months while this person gets healthy, and they need to keep themselves available for me. And I promise you, I will get this movie back up and running, and we will go make this movie. And I have 12 individual conversations with all of our department heads. I'm taking each one of them out. I'm going, and then after I do the department heads, I get the rest of the 80 something people in a room at the hotel that we were staying at. And I explained, "Guys, this is what's going on. We're not shooting this movie in 8 days. I need everyone to promise me that they're going to come back in 3 months." Almost everyone came back in 3 months. But there was that period of time, literally it was a 24-hour period, where I'm going and trying to go to bed, armed with this information that we're all here for nothing right now. This movie's not happening. No one else knows. I'm the only person that knows that this is not happening. And so that was a very difficult time. It was very, very scary. As a young producer at that time, being sort of saddled with that, on my shoulders was really tough, really tough.
And you've got some big names there, obviously. Oscar Isaac, Ben Affleck, Charlie Hunnam, Pedro Pascal. That is awesome.
Yeah. It was an amazing cast. They're all amazing people.
I don't know if you saw him on SNL here recently.
Pedro?
He was terrific.
Yeah, he's the best. He's also just like a lovely human being as well, which is rare sometimes when you get to be that big of a star. But he's the best. That was on. I think going to sort of the personal one. I think and career one. I spent 15 years at Atlas building to the point where I can go do it myself, right? So I didn't get in this business to have a boss forever. No producer does. And you can get comfortable really easily in this business. And I got very comfortable there. I had a big, nice, fancy office. I was making a nice salary. I had all the bells and whistles that you can want. But I was squished up against the ceiling there. Like, there was nowhere else to go. And there are some people that are totally cool with being there for their whole career. Like, that's sort of, they got to that place. they're happy, they've got a nice life. And that was not me. Like, I'm not that guy. And so I got to that place and I'm like, what's next? How do I get to that next level from even here? And that means I don't need a boss anymore. Like, I can do this on my own. I'm doing this on my own already. I'm just making someone else a lot of money while I'm doing it. And I'm also, while I'm here, I'm Chuck Roven's guy. Like, that's what I am, right? Like, I have no individuality as a producer. I never created my own identity as a producer. And so finally, at the end of 2021, I'm figuring it out. I'm going, listen, this is my last year. I start 2021. My contract is up at the end of 2021. And my boss and we get along great. Like, there's no issues there. I just know that I'm as far as I can get here. Like, there's nowhere else to go. And so I'm getting towards the end of 2021. And I'm like, go to dinner with my wife. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like, this is the thing. I'm going to take the leap out of the nest. It's been a very nice, safe nest. I'm going to take the leap. When Chuck comes to me with a new contract in a week, I'm going to say, listen, like, this is the time. I loved working here. I got no issues. I'm going to take the leap. So cut to a week later, he comes to me with a contract. He's asking me to agree to a 3-year deal. And which means, and I'm the kind of guy, like, even though technically in California, like, even though if you sign a multi-year contract, you can bail if you want. I'm not that guy. So if I sign 3 years, I'm there with you for 3 years. And so we had a nice chat. He offered me a good amount of money and to stay for 3 years. And I said, listen, let me just think about it. Went back home again, had another conversation with the wife. I'm like, listen, this is safe. If we want to stay safe, take no risks, we could do this. It's 3 more years. It's great. But the way I look at it is I'm just delaying the inevitable by 3 more years. Because inevitably I'm going to go do this. And at that point, I was 39 and I'm like, it's, I'm getting close to 40. If not now, then when? It's sort of way out. And so went back to him, decided, listen, like, I'm going to do this. Had a conversation with him. It was a very nice, like, amicable, like, you're right. You're ready for this. I'll be here to support you, whatever you need to do. End of 21, signed that exit agreement, told everyone in town, which was the hardest thing to do. I remember I stared at that email for days of, like, I had like 700 people on that email, that I was sending out that I was leaving. And I knew the moment I hit send, like, there was no going back from there, and that's what it was. So I did that. And then, the way life works, it throws curveballs at you sometimes. And literally 3 days later, we got a phone call. My wife got a phone call because she was having some health issues about, and we were a little bit worried what was going on. We didn't quite know. And she got a phone call saying that she had breast cancer. And the story does not end badly. She's good now. She's in remission now. But this was the end of so everything, we had literally 3 days to be on this high of, like, here's the new chapter. Here's what we're going to go do. One phone call comes and it all goes straight out the window. And the kind of breast cancer that she had was HER2 negative breast cancer, which is a very rare kind, which means that you don't just go get a little bit of radiation and a surgery because it was stage 2, which is what you normally do. You start chemo immediately. So it was like, and this was like December 23rd, we got this phone call and they wanted her to start like on the 26th. We're like, can we please just have the holidays? We'll start January 2nd. So she started January 2nd of 2022. And so what was initially this whole plan of launching my own company and doing all this and taking the momentum from that email I sent 2 weeks ago and the excitement all just came crashing into a wall of, like, now it's about keeping my wife alive. And so I pretty much spent all of 2022 with her, sort of keeping her alive, as I like to say. But in addition to that, because I'm a glutton for punishment, we had an entire home renovation planned for April of 2022. So this cancer thing screwed up everything in our lives. The one thing my wife was like, we're not taking this off the tracks. We're doing this. So in 2022, in the middle of the heaviest part of chemo, we started demoing my house. And my general contractor happened to be my best friend. And so he's like, you need to at least leave the house for like 3 weeks while the demo happens and you should stay away from the house the whole time, but you're telling me you're not, so we'll figure it. So like literally during the summer of 2022, I put my desk in the backyard because the house was filled with construction workers. I had a wife who was like going through this insane thing. So I was moving her from room to room. So like they would finish that room and then that would be the room that she would like stay in. I also had 4 dogs. So I'm keeping the dogs away. I got the desk in the backyard. I'm keeping my wife alive. I'm managing a home reno, which by the way, this is my first year ever not being a salaried employee. I'm spending money hand over fist. I don't know when the next thing is going to happen. I'm trying to create a slate. I'm trying to keep myself relevant in town. So it's all these things happening at one time. It felt like, it was like, why is the world doing this to me? You know, like why, like this is the moment, and it all came crashing into a wall at one point. And so all of 2022 was me working from the backyard, going to multiple trips every week to Cedars-Sinai for chemo infusions, surgeries, radiation, all of the things you could possibly imagine. And then by the time we got to the end of 2022, which is probably like November of 2022, when things started to calm down a little bit, the reno was done. The wife was now going through the sort of what we call targeted chemo at this point, so it was much easier on the body. Is when I was like, okay, I'm going to officially launch Pigswell. And so that was, so I luckily every little moment that I found between all these other things I was doing, I was just on phone calls and in the backyard and reading scripts. And so, you know, it was not a lot of time, but every free second I had, I was building to that. Like, okay, now I can launch my company finally, and I did that at the end of 2022. So really, our first year was 2023.
So what
And
was
then,
the little,
yeah,
what was the little voice in your head every day when you're going through all that? What is that? What is that voice?
I mean, honestly, it was, I know I'm a good producer, and I literally said, I'm going to produce my way out of this. Like that, this is what I do for a living. I literally solve problems for a living.
Yeah.
What my job is on a movie set is literally putting out fires and solving problems and making sure this all happens. And so I was like, I'm built for this. Like I can manage the medical treatments, the chemo, the doctor's offices, the home reno, the budget of the home reno, the dogs, the building of the new company. And I just sort of bifurcated each thing in its own little pod and made sure that like every day, everything continued to stay on track. And I knew that like, I can get through this because I can, and I knew that if I do get through this,
Yeah.
that like, what else? Like, come on, like, you know, like everything will be easy from that point or easier. And so that's kind of like, and also quite honestly, like I didn't have a choice. Like there was no, like, I didn't save that much money. I had enough to get me through that year if there was no serious medical issues and expensive things going on. But now there is lots of expensive things going on. And so that year worth of savings that I was like, I can do this for a whole year turned into like, okay, like you're, you know, if you don't start figuring out how to raise some money for this new company and launch this thing, I got to go get a job again. Like that's where I was like, maybe this wasn't the right time. Like maybe that the world was just telling me that it's not the right time to do your own thing. Cause there was, you know, and by the way, during this year, I'm turning down jobs every few weeks that people are calling me going, you're not there anymore. Do you want to come here? I'm not taking a job. I'm doing my own thing. I'm starting my own company. That was what I had to keep. And my wife, like, God bless her, was like completely supportive the whole time. Like, I believe in you. You'll get this done. You know, and so
love that.
That's sort of what was happening in my head. And then when I got to that point where I raised some money to start the company and do it the right way. And then realized at that point, like, if we got through that year, 2022, like I'll remember that year forever, like getting through that year, you know, we can get through anything. That's kind of how I looked at it.
Well, massive tip of hat. That's
absolutely
that's legend stuff. When you don't have a safety net and you're just staring at the ground and you're like, you know what? If I trip, I'm hitting it.
You're betting on you. You're still betting on yourself. For all of it.
It's me versus me every morning and getting up after it. So,
yeah. And my old boss, by the way, Chuck, was like so lovely about it. When I told him about it, I mean, his first gut reaction was like, you got to come back. Not a good time to go do your own thing. Like, why don't you just come back, sign the 3-year deal, come back, you know, and then, you know, that was sort of what he was just so lovely about it. Cause he was like, listen, like, cause by the way, he had a wife who had passed away before I started working with him, who went through the same thing. So he's like, I've been through it. Like, I know how hard this is. It's not an easy thing to deal with. It's a full-time job keeping that person alive, let alone trying to do all these other things you're going to try to do at one time. So he was so lovely about it. But again, like I was just I had moved on mentally. I'm like, I can't come back. If I come back, I'll be there forever. And all these other jobs that were sort of coming and going and coming into my life and said, do you want to do this and that? It was like, if I do this, like, I'm not going to do my own thing. I'm going to just get stuck there. Cause that's like, I've only been at one company my whole career. I was there for 15 years. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that jumps from a year here and then 2 years there and then 1 year there. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wasn't about to do that. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, John, should we go through Big Swell? Because I'm dying.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, and I think our audience would love to hear what you're up to. You're trying to change
For sure.
the game, right?
Yeah, it's not just a production company; it's a new model. So
so the new model
share.
that I put together was, and we're still rolling it out, and essentially the basis of it is that Hollywood has been run by the same people for the last 40 years. Like, truly, like the same people. The actual same people have been running the studios for 40 years. And they've literally just been playing musical chairs. Get fired from this studio, get hired at that studio. Burn out at that studio, this studio welcomes you with open arms. And it's literally just it's the same people at the top for the last 40 years. In my opinion, it's why Hollywood is suffering. Movies aren't making as much money. They're trying to use the same playbook with the same audience, but it's not the same audience. Audiences have evolved and they've changed. And those same people that have been running the studios for 40 years are hiring the same producers to produce their movies over the same, my old boss being one of them. There's like 10 of these producers that are now in their 70s. And the people that are running the studios are now in their late 60s, early 70s. And we are now experiencing the result of that in Hollywood, which the result is that the people that are making movies are disconnected from the audience that they're making them for. They are failing to acknowledge that the same playbook that they've been playing 10 years ago, even that they're trying now is not going to work anymore. But that's all they know, and so they're trying the same. And so for me, I looked at what my position was in my old company, and I was doing a lot of the work, meaning that I was interfacing with the studios and I was on set every day. And there were times where the studios, like, I had to make sure that my boss was looped in. Like, I would bring him, like, here's what's going on, because I didn't want to get too far ahead of him. There was a bunch of different versions of me at other companies, and we are easier to work with, more user friendly in all aspects. We are there every day, so we're on set every day. We don't have, we cost a lot less than those guys do, and that. Why not offer the town an alternative solution to the same thing they've been doing every time, which is that, hey, you can get the same quality of producer that you're getting with me when I was at the bigger company, but now I cost half as much. I'm on my own now. I need it more. I want it more. I'll work harder. And why not do that? And by the way, I'm way more in tune with the audiences we're making movies for than those guys in their 70s. And so I know lots of other friends that are just like me. They've been at these big companies for 10, 12, 13, 14 years. They've never experienced real upside in any of the financial success they provided to their companies. And that should be a new model that allows us as younger producers to eventually make the same amount of money that these older guys have been making. And there's a huge divide in Hollywood. There is like guys like me who do fine. And then there are guys that do 1,000 times better. There's really not much in between. And if we don't do something about it in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, when those guys are done, there is no next generation of producers. There is no one else that knows how to do those things except us. And if we just stay with those people forever and they eventually retire, then what are you at that point? So, like, why not go off on your own? What if we came together and there was like 3 or 4 or 5 of us of this level of younger producer that, to me, is the solution to a problem that's happening in town, which is movies cost too much. The audiences aren't coming out. And reasons for those two things are things are continuing to be done the old way. Why are we doing things the old way when there's a new way to do them, and probably a better, more efficient way to do them? and really a way to target a younger audience that this demo is just completely disconnected from, really, in Hollywood. So that was the basic idea, that we are the ones that do the work. It's kind of now our turn. And though that generation is absolutely not going to hand it to us. They're never going to give it to us. We have to take it. And, you're seeing the same thing in politics in this company. You're seeing people die in office because they're not handing it over to the next generation. They're holding on to it for dear life. Right. And so to me, that same thing that you're seeing in politics, it's happening in Hollywood too. Like they're not handing it off to the next generation.
Andy, it happens in other industries as well. That's
totally.
Yeah. Why I left and started Dye Capital. I was tired of waiting. So I hear you.
And that's where we all are. We're like, a lot of buddies of mine, like we're in our early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. We're tired of waiting, like seriously. And we sort of got to that point where like, we know how to do this ourselves. We have the right relationships. We have the right experience. No one's going to give it to us. Let's just go take it. And so slowly but surely, that's what we're doing.
The hungry dog gets the bone, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The biggest, not the oldest, not the richest.
Totally. Yep. And honestly, like a lot of people look at us and they looked at me and they go, are you crazy? Like you're at that huge company making these amazing movies and you're going to leave to essentially start over? Like you're really going to do that? A little crazy. And, yeah. And I go, absolutely. And here's the thing. Here's what I always told myself. If this doesn't work after 2 or 3 years, I'll go take another job. Like, like there's those jobs are always going to exist out there. But like, why not take a swing? Because if I don't take a swing, then I'm going to always regret the fact that I never took a swing. And so like that to me that's kind of what we're doing. We are essentially showing the town, the agency system, the studio system, that there's another solution to the producerial problem of this older generation that is aging out, but failing to realize that they're aging out, not letting go, and budgets are getting bloated. Content isn't what it used to be, and there's reasons for that. And I know the studios are looking for solutions to it, and we're here to show them that there's a solution to it. So again,
how's that been received on the studio level? And you guys making traction?
We are making traction, yeah. But again, what we're realizing is the studios are not just going to give it to us. We have to show them that this works, right? So like, because again, don't forget, those studios are run by that same generation. So like that same generation that runs that studio, they don't understand it yet. They don't get it yet. And so what we've been doing is we've been building our own movies internally. Two of them we're making this year that we're making independently, which means that we're not using the studio system. We're raising independent financing and pure equity from investors outside of Hollywood to show the town that, look, we made this great film for this price and connected with this massive audience. We got these great directors and these great actors. And look, we didn't have to do it with that older generation. We did it on our own. We did it for half the price that you're used to paying for these things. And that is the only way that the studio system is ever going to really, truly take notice. They're not going to give it to us to let us go explore if we can do it for them. We have to do it outside of them and then show them, and they will come calling and ask us to be a part of that system. So that's kind of what we're doing. I mean, I do have some stuff at studios. That's not to say that I'm not working at studios, but in terms of the first 2 movies that we're going to make, which are this year, we're doing outside the studios.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Anything you can share so the audience can track and support this, or anything you can reveal, or we'll just follow the Big Swell website?
Yeah, I can't yet. I'm sorry, but
I already knew the answer to that question.
Yeah, I wish I could, but you'll see them. I swear you guys will see them in the next, let's call it,
I have
18
no
months.
doubt.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Andy, you are an inspiration on 1,000 levels. I knew this was going to be a good interview, but you really are an incredible person, and your story is phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing with us.
Appreciate it, guys.
And man, we are rooting for you. We love game changers and people who go and shake it up and go against the grain and do it differently, because there's just business is like that, right? Inherently, people play it safe. It's about mitigating risk, and the people who come out are the ones who take the swings and fight in the arena, and man, holy shit, have you done that in your life? But so one last question to ask you. Yeah. So for our audience, if you're talking to the Andy Horwitz of end of 22, 23, or right at the end of Atlas, people who are in the arena right now, maybe taking those swings. Should I get out of the arena, go back to the house cat life? Should I bet on myself? Should I not? All that. What do you say to them? Give us a nugget of takeaway to pass along.
Well, I can only really sort of apply it to Hollywood just because that's the business that I work in. And the way that what I've told myself my whole career is that, and it's true, and I've been on the ride, is that Hollywood is a roller coaster. It is extreme lows followed by extreme highs. And the only people that survive are the ones that acknowledge the fact that, like, when you're in that low point, that it will get better. Like, this is not it forever. And that everyone at every level in town, from the PA who's just starting this business to Steven Spielberg, they're on that same ride as well. They're all on it together. They also have those lows. They're different kind of lows. They have not financial hardship in their life type of lows, but they have career lows, and they have disappointments and frustrations. And as a producer in Hollywood, we are on the front lines of disappointment and success, which means we get the news first that things are bad, and we get the news first that things are great. And so for me, when things are really tough, and as a producer, especially an independent producer, they're tough a lot. Like, every day you're going through, like, you're reminding yourself that, like, it will get better. And that I'm very thankful for all of the movies that I got to be a part of and everything that I've done, because I rely on those memories and those feelings to remind myself that, like, I've been there before, and I will get back to those things at certain points. And so to me, it's just hold on during the ride. You have to just hold on. There are a lot of people in this business that come into town and it's really hard, and it's been 2 years and haven't gotten there, and they're gone. Like, they just leave, right? Like, those are people that just get off the ride. There is no other thing for me. Like, there is no other business that I would work in. I'm not qualified to do anything else. I've done this my whole career. It's all I've ever wanted to do. So there is no getting off the ride. Like, I'm on this ride. I live on this ride. And so that to me is like, I would remind myself that it's going to be very difficult, but just stay on the ride, because I've already gotten a lot of those little moments of success and wins. And you just need one every now and then to keep you going. Like, that's it. You can have 100 bad days, and you just got one good one where something great happens. And I'm telling you that 99 one behind you mean nothing. And there was one thing that we always used to, my old boss, Chuck Robin, told me this when I was a young assistant. I'll never forget it, which is, in Hollywood, we get told no a lot as producers, like a lot, like every day. And no matter, even the biggest producers in town get told no every day. And that you could be told no 1,000 times, but you just need one yes on that project. It's like, so we can take a project out and get passed on by every single studio in town. And one studio says yes. And truly, none of those no's mean anything. So really, you can get told no 1,000 times. You just need one yes. That's it. And if you get that one yes, those no's mean nothing. And that is like something that I carry with me every single day. And every project that we're banging on doors with and trying to get made and trying to find financing for, that constantly sits in the front of my head.
Don't give up.
Like,
you just
I
need
just
the
need
one
that
yes.
one yes. That's it. That's it.
My terrible golf game. You just have to hit one shot. You pierce it. You compress it. It feels really good.
I can play.
Bullshit.
I've got this.
The other 100 strokes don't matter. It's that one, man.
That's what, by the way, I just started golfing about a year ago for the first time in my life. I've become addicted to it. It's very dangerous. And my father-in-law told me exactly that. He goes, listen, you could have just an entire round of terrible shots, but you hit one great shot, and that's what keeps you going to come back the next day. That's it. You just need that one good shot.
I just got to play a wonderful course with three really good players, good guys, and it was a pleasure to get to do it. But I'll tell you, I'm terrible, but I love it.
That is a humbling sport. Let me tell you, like, I have been humbled by that sport for sure.
If you ever want to come down and play South Florida, we've got connections to get you on some of the good tracks.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I will let you know. You guys too. If you ever come out here, I'm a member at the Calabasas Country Club. It's a great track. You guys ever want to play?
Yeah. Love that. Andy, one last side nugget, just on the thing you just hit. Share of all the big ones that you've done. A lot of no's on those. Is there any good little nugget on one of those, the big name features getting a ton of no's and the one yes, for people to understand, like, even movies that you think this is like epic, how many people have passed on those?
Let's see. I mean, Triple Frontier is a good example, honestly. That movie was, like I said, it was kind of cursed. Like we sold that movie to Paramount Pictures when I was an assistant. Like truly I was still on the desk at that time. My first job on that movie was that movie was going to get made when I was an assistant. The director was Catherine Bigelow, who had just directed The Hurt Locker. And the writer was Mark Bull, who just wrote The Hurt Locker. And that movie came out and won Oscars and got all this attention for our movie. All of a sudden, we're going out for making the movie. Long story short, they had to go on a tech scout into Brazil. Everyone had to get their passport stamped to get visas in this 48-hour window. The only way to do that was getting everyone's passports stamped in New York at the Brazilian consulate. So as a young assistant, I'm getting on a plane with everyone's passports, flying to New York, landing on a red eye, landing at 6 a.m., being at the consulate, getting everyone's passport stamps, going right back to the airport, flying right back to LA. That was my first job on that movie. Cut to 6 years later, longer than that, 7 years later, I'm now being given that movie. Like now the movie's like by the way, then it didn't get made and it was dormant for 6 years. And all of a sudden it's now coming back to life. I have a meeting with the director. He really wants to do it. The studio likes that director. Great, let's go. Now all of a sudden I'm the senior producer on this movie that I was the assistant on 6 or 7 years ago, because I've grown throughout that amount of time.
Yeah.
And we got to the point where we put a great cast together for that. I flew to Hawaii. We started prepping. This is the very first version of it. And we had a casting issue. One of our pieces of cast didn't get along with our director, and kind of poisoned another one of the piece of cast. And so we had to fire that one, and then that one quit. And then at that same week, the head of the studio at Paramount was leaving and a new one was taking over. And normally when that happens, any kind of problem movie just gets wiped off the slate, because that new studio exec, he doesn't want to deal with other people's problems. And so it's so much easier just to go, we're canceling the movie and it's over. And so that casting issue happened on a Friday, the same day that studio head took over. We were essentially told that if we don't solve this problem over the weekend, that by Monday the movie was probably going to be over. So we spent the whole weekend figuring out this new casting configuration that we really loved, got these people to say yes, read the script. Monday, called the studio. We're super excited. We solved the problem. Doesn't really matter. He's pulling the plug on the movie. It's over. So then, of course, because of the way Hollywood works, the Hollywood trades find out. It gets out announced that this movie has got the plug pulled. Everyone's trying to figure out how to salvage this. We start picking up the phone to call other studios to see if anyone else wants it. People are saying, no, it's a problem movie. And then one phone call comes to us. It was incoming to us. And it was a guy named Scott Stuber who was leaving Universal to go run Netflix. It was like he was taking over Netflix, and he was creating the original film division of Netflix. And I'll never forget, we missed the call. He emails us from his Universal email address, because he didn't even have his Netflix email address yet. And he said, I know what this movie is. I love this package. I literally start at the studio next week. I'm buying this movie. I'm bringing it in. And so that's then why that movie ended up at Netflix. And so we ended up making it there. And so that was like an all hope is lost moment. Like if we weren't those kind of producers, that movie could have just disappeared and died.
Just went away.
And it just went away. And because that one phone call came, and then that one email followed it from that same person, is why that movie exists in the world today. Like if that phone call didn't come,
great movie.
That email didn't come, that movie would have just disappeared into the ether like hundreds of others do every year, and it would have just been gone. But like that one thing is the reason why, that we got the traction over at Netflix.
Amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I'm like behind the scenes getting the
I know.
the scoop. I love it.
Well, Andy, go ahead.
We're about life learning and learning new stuff, and John's constantly doing new stuff. And what are you reading? What are you consuming? What are you watching? What are your podcasts? What are you
great question.
Self-improvement? What are you doing for yourself?
For me these days, listen, I surf. That's my my sort of mental reset. And it's sort of, I've been doing it since I was a kid. And it's, for me, it's kind of the healthiest thing you could possibly do. When you're out on the wire, there's no phones ringing. There's no one to ask me for things. I don't need to do anything except focus on one single thing, which is catching that wave and riding it in. And so I do spend as much time at the beach as I possibly can. It's like my home away from home, really. Um, I like to stay up to speed with what's happening in the world. So, I'm one of those guys where I listen to the left side of things and the right side of things, and I decide for myself where I want to sit in sort of the mid. Usually, I sit in the middle somewhere. So I kind of am all over the place.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think I do that because when I make movies for everybody. So
Right.
I need to make sure that I'm making my movies for as wide of an audience as humanly possible. And that means that I need to understand all these other things. So and I also spend a lot of time, as much as people think it's kind of like a waste of time and energy, on social media. Because to me, I need to see what the Gen Z is into and what they're looking at and what they're interested in. And I'm 41. That's not my generation, but I need to stay connected to that generation, because that generation, if you don't get that generation to show up to the movie theater, your movie is not going to be successful. That's just the hard truth of the world that we live in today. And so I do as much as I can, sort of figuring out TikTok and following the closest trends. I listen to news podcasts. I listen to long form interview podcasts. I need to always be feeding my brain with something. I have to. That's just kind of who I am. I need to absorb new things. It's why I took up golf. I took up golf a year ago because, I was I need that next thing. And I love to do things part of why I love surfing. I can disconnect my brain from the world that is existing around. Golf, I've realized that I can kind of do that too. When I'm on the golf course, first of all, I can't golf during the week because my phone's ringing and my emails are coming in, and I can't focus because it's I'm thinking about what's happening at work. But on the weekends when I golf, 4 hours or 5 hours, I'm out there with buddies, we're having some drinks. I'm just disconnecting from the world around me for that period of time. So for me, it's just, I'm kind of all over the map, I'm listening to everything, I listen to news podcasts, long form podcasts. I watch golf at night, on YouTube clips and learning new things. And so I just am constantly feeding my brain with stuff, that's just who I am. I have to just constantly keep learning new things and experiencing new things.
Yeah.
That's great stuff.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, you are a true legend of the arena, man. Hats off to you and everything you're doing, and excited for Big Swell and this next chapter for you. We absolutely wish you the best. We're here for you if anything we can ever do for you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Feel free to always reach out, and excited to see what comes out. We're going to keep our eyes out for these new pictures.
Please do. I'm excited to show the world what we went up to at Big Swell.
Yeah, man.
That's great. Andy, appreciate it. Great seeing you.
Thanks,
all right,
man.
guys. You too.